Hello, biology fans. I promised you I would give you some practice in understanding ploidy and mitosis and the kinds of questions that show up on exams, and here it is. I want to just start out by reminding you some of the concepts that we talked about in class. One of the big ones was that all humans are diploid. So humans are diploid organisms. And to be diploid means that you have 2x is the number of chromosomes that is diploid. So 2 is having to do with the di for diploid. And we know that 2x chromosomes equals 46 total chromosomes. The 2 in this instance means that you have 2 copies of every chromosome. So humans are diploid. We have 2 copies of every chromosome. That means we have 2 chromosome number 1s, 2 chromosome 2s, 2 chromosome 3s, etc., etc., etc. And you have chromosome 1 through 22, and then we have a set, so copy, a set of sex chromosomes. Okay. So if we have 2 copies of every chromosome and we have 46 total chromosomes, that means that X, which is the number of distinct chromosomes, X will equal 23. Right? So we have chromosome number 1 to 22, and we have 2 of each of those, and then we have our sex chromosomes. So you are either XX or XY in normal situations, quote-unquote normal situations. What if we have an organism that is not 2X? For example, if I were to give you a problem and say, there is an organism called a humpalump that is 4X. What does that mean? How many copies of every chromosome does a humpalump have? Well, based on, if you only can remember one thing and you remember that humans are 2X and we're diploid, that means we have 2 of every chromosome. If you're 4X, that means you have 4 copies of every chromosome. I know this may seem chromosome. Oops, there is an O in there. So this may seem a little juvenile, but what if this organism, the humpalump, had a total of 16 chromosomes? Now let's use a different number. Let's do 20. So if the total number of chromosomes equals 20, and the humpalump is 4X, that means that 4X equals 20. So how many different or distinct chromosomes does the humpalump have? If you solve for X in this equation, X equals 5. And if those chromosomes were numbered just like ours, you would have 4 chromosome 1s. So we would have number 1, you would have 4 copies. Number 2, you'd have 4 copies. Number 3, 4 copies. Number 4, 4 copies. And number 5, 4 copies. 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, did I do that correctly? Equals 20. Alright, well, the questions aren't going to be quite as simple as that. We're going to actually ask you to draw these organisms. Say, draw an organism such as a humpalump, which is 4X, in mitosis during metaphase. So what would that look like? Alright, so the humpalump is 4X equals 20. And if we're drawing that at metaphase, what does meta mean? Meta means middle. So this is the phase of mitosis where the chromosomes are lined up on the middle between the two ends of the cell. So we can draw a big old cell, right, and we're going to have the centrosomes at the opposite poles, at the opposite ends of the cell. And the important thing that you remember that during mitosis, what happened prior to mitosis? So if this is mitosis, what had to happen prior to mitosis? So leading up to mitosis, we had interphase. And during interphase, so we had G1, S, and G2. And in S, we duplicated our chromosomes. So remember, when we're drawing our chromosomes here, we're actually going to have duplicated chromosomes, which look like an X. And they look like an X, but they're still considered one individual chromosome because they only have one centromere. They have two sister chromatids, but they're one chromosome. And so let's just put this in, if I do it in colors, it means that we have 4 of every kind of chromosome. So we would have 4 pink chromosomes. We might have 4 blue chromosomes. All right, I need a bunch of different colors here, remember. We have 4 green chromosomes. We would have 4 dark blue chromosomes. It gets very messy when we have a lot of chromosomes. And then let's do one more, I don't know, yellow. We would have 4 yellow chromosomes. Very messy. And what would happen is the spindle fibers would attach to the kinetochore, which is found on every centromere. I don't want to draw all the spindle fibers. And this shows that humphalumph in metaphase. I obviously won't use high numbers so that I can actually see what you're drawing, or if these are multiple choice questions, I will draw them so that it's crystal clear and you won't have difficulty counting. Okay? Let's do another problem. What if we address the problem coming from a different angle? Meaning, instead of me giving you the number of chromosomes, me giving you numbers, I actually give you a drawing. So, for example, here is a cell, and here are the centrosomes. And if I draw chromosomes, let's say I do this. And I start drawing my chromosomes. And I ask you, if that's all I have, right? I could ask you, what stage of mitosis is this? Right. So what stage of mitosis? And you would tell me that this is clearly metaphase because the chromosomes are lined up in the middle. Right, so this is metaphase. And what would this organism have with respect to ploidy? So how do you figure out what it has with respect to ploidy? The easiest thing to do is, whoa, sorry about that, count how many copies of any individual chromosome you see. So let's count the yellow. How many yellows do we see? I see 1, 2. So there's 2 copies of yellow. How many copies of pink? 1, 2. Good. 2 copies of pink. What about white? 2 copies of white. All right. So that suggests that this is a 2X organism. And how many total chromosomes do you see? Well, you just count the centromeres. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that gives us 6 total chromosomes. So how many distinct chromosomes would there be? How many distinct? Well, 3. One yellow, one white, one pink. Okay? So those are the types of questions that you might see on an exam. How else might this look? There's lots of different ways this can look. You can go from one end where I give you numbers, or you can go from the other end where I just give you a picture, or we could go from somewhere in the middle where you get a little bit of both. So here's an example of that. What if I told you that we have an organism that is in anaphase, and it looks like this. All right, so remember what anaphase is. Anaphase is when they're pulling away from one another. And let's use pink. So you might have something that looks like this. And here's, I need to make more spindle fibers. And it could be something as simple as this. What would you tell me about the ploidy of this organism? Well, how do you do ploidy again? Count how many copies do you see of any color or any individual chromosome? So how many yellow? 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 copies of yellow, and we have 3 copies of pink. So this organism is 3N, and if you count the total number of chromosomes, all right, maybe you want to think of it now as these are going to end up being 2 individual cells. All right, this is going to eventually split into 2 individual cells. So how many chromosomes does each cell have after it splits? Well, you have 6 total chromosomes, 3 pink, 3 yellow. So how many distinct chromosomes are there? Well, if you solve for n equals 2. So basically you would have chromosome number 1, which might be the yellow, and chromosome number 2, which would be the pink. Alright, so I'm going to give you a couple problems that what you should do is you should pause your video and try to answer them yourselves, and I will pause the video, give you time to answer them, and then I will go ahead and answer them for you. Okay, question number 1. Here is a drawing, and what you're seeing are the chromosomes in the nucleus. Get another color in here. And what I'd like you to do is tell me, what is the ploidy? And then what would this cell look like after anaphase? So what would this cell look like in telophase? So pause your video, do the problem for yourself, and then restart the video where I'll give you the answer. Okay, so here's the answer. Let me push this to the top, make it a little smaller, because I'm going to draw what these cells would look like in telophase. So let's answer the first part of the question, what is the ploidy? Once again, ploidy, how many copies does each chromosome have? So if you count yellow, we have 4. If you count pink, there's 4. If you count green, there's 4. So this is an organism that is 4N. 4N equals, how many total chromosomes do we see? Well, there's pink, yellow, and green. So that gives us 12 total chromosomes. And N equals 3. Remember, N is the number of distinct, different chromosomes that we have. So you're going to have chromosome 1, chromosome 2, and chromosome 3. The second part of the question is, what would these cells look like at telophase? Okay, so at telophase, you would have, all right, you still have the centrosome, but at this point you have chromosomes, right, that have separated. And how many do I need of each? I need 4 of each of these sister chromatids. So 4 green, whoop, sorry, maybe it shouldn't look quite like that because it got pulled in this direction. 4 yellow. And we need 4 pink. Remember, the cell is going to finish this process. It's going to undergo cytokinesis, where we end up cleaving these two cells apart. A nucleus, so the nucleus is beginning to form around the new chromosomes. It does not include the centrosome in telophase. And you would have to pick out this picture out of a lineup. So every new cell, right, this is going to be a new cell and this is going to be a new cell. How many chromosomes do they have? 12. Remember, mitosis, all new daughter cells have exactly the same chromosomes as the original mother cell had. So you get 2 daughter cells that are as close, as similar to one another as possible. There could have been errors in replication, but we're hoping that very few errors occurred. All right, good. Let's do another question. Here's question number 2. All right, how about you have an organism that is, I don't want to make this too hard. So let's do a 5N organism, and it has a total number of chromosomes 15, which is still a lot. Okay. How would you draw this organism in G1? All right, so now you have to think, right? Think back, when is G1? Maybe you want to draw yourself the cell cycle. Pause the video right now and work that out. All right, I'm back. I'm going to answer this for you. So G1, remember, is part of interphase. So if this is interphase, remember you go from G1, oops, excuse me, that's incorrect, to S to G2, and then we go to mitosis. So mitosis basically just happened, and you have a cell that just came out of mitosis. So here's a cell, and it's just in G1, and it has a nucleus. Remember, we're just going to draw the nucleus around as a circle because we don't want to have to spend a lot of time on this. And how many total chromosomes should it have in it? Well, the total number of chromosomes is here, 15. We need 5N equals 15, so if N, right, we solve for N, 5N equals 15, divide both sides by 5, N equals 3. That means we need 3 of each chromosome. Here's the important part of this question. Okay. In G1, what has not happened, right? What has not happened is S. So we do not have duplicated chromosomes. So in this case, our chromosomes are just going to be linear chromosomes. And what did I say? We needed 5 copies of each. So here's 5 copies of pink. Here's 5 copies of yellow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then let's grab one more color. Let's do green. 5 copies of green. And that's what the cell would look like in G1. Remember what it's doing here is it's checking to make sure that the chromosomes were correctly segregated during mitosis, and the cell is growing so that it can duplicate its chromosomes when it gets to S phase. Good, very good. Keep up the good work. Let's do another question. Question 3. Right, let's do a question where I give you a picture, and you're going to tell me what's happening. So if I draw a picture, and here's a cell, and we have our centrosomes, and I draw something that looks like this. Let me get another color here. Alright, I think that's good enough. Pause your video. Tell me the ploidy. So we're looking for the ploidy. And what phase and what's going on. This could be a multiple choice question. This could be an essay question. Okay, pause the video, answer, and then I'll come back and give you the answer. Okay, so ploidy, once again, how do we figure out ploidy? We count the number of copies. So how many copies of green do you see? I see 1, 2, 3. How many copies? The reason that we count each one is important. What if there's more of one than another? What does that mean? Well, it means that something bad happened. You shouldn't have different numbers of copies of the individual chromosomes. So I'm just checking to make sure when I say, okay, I see 3 green, I see 1, 2, 3 yellow, 1, 2, 3 white, 1, 2, 3 blue. All right, I feel very confident that this cell is 3N. And if I count the total number of chromosomes by counting the total number of centromeres, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that means N, right, the number of distinct chromosomes. If we solve 3N equals 12, we divide both sides by 3, N equals 4. So in this case, you would have 4 different chromosomes. Chromosome 1, 2, 3, and 4. Chromosome 1 might be green, 2 yellow, 3 blue, and 4 white. What phase would you say this is in? Well, one of the clues to this is, do you see individual sister chromatids, or do you see duplicated chromosomes with 2 sister chromatids? So you clearly see 2 sister chromatids. So this is before anaphase. So your choices, remember, if you do PPMet, right, so it's before anaphase. And we know M is when they're lined up on the metaphase plate. And are they all lined up pretty? Nope, they're all over the place. So now we've narrowed it down. It's either P or P, prometaphase or prophase. Well, what happens in prophase compared to prometaphase? In prophase, alright, normally what happens is you see the disintegration of the nuclear membrane. So if I were to draw that, I would draw it as the nuclear membrane kind of still there, but not really, and it would be breaking apart. So that's the clue here that, look, these chromosomes have already gone apart. They're probably to be, if I'm going to say this is prometaphase, I probably should have drawn in some spindle fibers. All right. I didn't draw them. I was being lazy. But you could figure it out. You're smart people. So hopefully you would have said this is pro-metaphase, and the ploidy is 3N with a total number of chromosomes of 12 with 4 distinct chromosomes. Very good. All right. I'm hoping that helped. I will provide a similar video for meiosis because that's where things get complicated, and I hope you have a great weekend.